Hello, everyone. My name is Jason Pitt, and I'm the moderator for this panel, Rising Tides and Strange Centers, PTRPG and the Myth of One Space. So, I'm going to let our fine panelists introduce themselves. So, let's start off with Sin.
Hi, my name is Sin. I am a game designer, illustrator, and layout artist from the Philippines. I've been doing this kind of stuff since like maybe 2019 or so when I discovered that apparently there's a game designing scene on Twitter. But before that, I'd also been designing. Um, what else do I say? I suppose a lot of people know me from the plant games. That's mostly what I hear people know me from. Um, uh, and but these days I do take a lot of layout work. A lot of people hire me for that kind of stuff these days, and I'm happy to do that kind of stuff these days. I really enjoy it. So yeah, I also have a Redbubble. So if you guys want to buy some things for the Halloween and the holidays, but anyway, that's me.
Momotos.
For
Yeah.
letting me introduce myself. So, I'm Momotos. I am a Filipino game and graphic designer. So, recently I released a really um, wonderful Kickstarter that has been a great opportunity for me, which is ARC RPG. I do game design, I do illustrations and layout, but I also juggle it alongside the day job. But also some of things like trying to help uplift more marginalized voices like creators, which is why across RPGC Twitter and website was created, but even small things like creating my own tiny spaces where people can be comfortable and where people can be encouraged to create, to write, and share their own stories. And I also have a Discord where people just share pictures of skies. So it's actually nice because then I would see sky from like Germany, a sky from Florida, a sky from Peru, and that it makes me more happy that the world is round and that I get to connect with more people across the entire online space.
Fantastic. Mary.
Hi, everybody. I'm Mary. So I'm the non-writer in this group. I'm more of a community organizer. So I help organize TRPG conventions here in our local scene. And that's pretty much. And I also enjoy playtesting for these wonderful writers over here. So I help playtest in all of their games, actually, I think, at this point. So yeah, that's where I come in, I guess. Yep. So that's pretty much me.
Me? It's me, right? Okay. Hello. Yes. Hi, I'm Pam Ponsalan. A lot of you guys know me as Pamu. I always get stuck on this part. I do game design. I also do community management. I am a sensitivity reader, an editor, and a cultural consultant. And one of the, I keep saying this, but I'll never get tired of it. The reason why Big Bad Con means a lot to me is because this was basically the gate that me and one of my really good friends walked through, uh, carrying a butt ton of Southeast Asian games into the convention and basically going, "Have you heard of these Southeast Asian games? They're amazing." So that was me, and Mahar, who has a panel coming up, I think, later. I cannot do time zones for the life of me though, so I'm very sorry. Check the schedule. You'll figure it out. You're all smart people, right? For the work that I've done, I tend to basically shill myself out anywhere that'll have me. Right. I personally like doing design for Forge in the Dark, powered by the Apocalypse, and a lot of OSR things. I spent a lot of my time doing small games, but these days I'm trying to look towards making bigger projects come to fruition because that was really where I started as a game designer. Some of you may know me as well from Asians Represent. I am one of the Discord mods, and I may get more involved in a greater capacity with the team soon. I also handled the game design Q&A for writing the other last year. And two of my biggest consultation jobs were the Ancestry and Culture zine under Eugene Marshall, Arcanist Press, and the Islands of Sinuuna, which if you haven't bought it yet, you really, really should, because it's Philippines meets D&D. And that's actually one of the intersections that we wanted to talk about today, but we'll get into that soon. So, hello.
So I know that all of you have your own plan for this panel, so I'm going to do my best to get out of the way. But just to start things off, could each of you talk about some of the um, myths or challenges that you want to bust?
Oh, oh, we have so many feelings about that. Okay, so first off, I'm gonna try to take a back seat as well because I've talked about this topic on my own a lot already, and I invited all of my friends, including my partner here, because they also have a lot of feelings that I feel should be articulated beyond myself. Because the biggest myth for me is what I like to call the all space. Right, TRPGs tends to be seen as a family in one industry. I have fought people and lost and or gained followers on Twitter by constantly reminding people, please do not say industry, say industries. Do not say community, communities. And please don't call us one family because we are not. So that's the big myth for me. So I wanted to, before I weigh in and just add stuff, I'm going to give the floor to the other three panelists who are with me. So whoever wants to start first, feel free, and I'll just follow up after all of you guys are done.
One of the myths that have been quite annoying to me at a small scale has been the assumption that we all come from America. Like, I do see that in Twitter. Like, why are you guys drinking at 18 years old? Isn't that too young? For me, it's like, you do know that not everyone lives in the US, right? And that's the annoying thing. And I'm mentioning it. It's fairly lighthearted, but with the conflation of RPG makers, players belonging to that one space, I find it a really useful symptom or maybe a manifestation of how the assumption that we all belong to the same background, even the same country, manifests in tiny and then later on will lead to bigger impact, bigger ways, and possibly even real harm. So yeah, that's my beef.
Well, to contribute to that also, like one of the most, I suppose, the biggest tells that a lot of people really do kind of like cater or, um, I guess they forget that there are spaces outside of America is really that, if you post outside of their waking hours, your tweet will likely go off to the wayside. I personally utilize my scheduling posts a lot, like especially if I have a new product out, if I have a new um like if I have a new art pack or if I have a new RPG out or if I just want to yell about whatever things I have produced in the recent like maybe 5 or so days. I am very conscious as part of like also my background because I worked in advertising for several years before this. I am very cognizant of the fact that if you post at a time when the Americans are asleep, nobody's gonna see your tweet, right? And this has become so ingrained in me that like sometimes when I stop to think about it, I'm just like, well, like how exhausting is that, right? That you have to like look at your clock and see, are the Americans awake? So that you get eyes on your project. And what's more exhausting about that is even if you do post during those times, it's not even a guarantee, I suppose, that it'll get like a lot of eyes on your project because the sensibilities and the tastes uh, will greatly differ, I suppose, across different places and spaces that you design in. So, um, if your preferences don't really match the general, I suppose, if your design preferences don't quite match everybody else's, that is like um, uh, that is like matching like the current preferences of like a lot of American users, it's very possible that it'll just go disappear into the onslaught of tweets that happen every day. More so if there's like some sort of discourse happening at the moment. Like, good God, good luck promoting. Good luck promoting when somebody's trying to be the main character on Twitter, right?
Actually, about that, I'm just gonna slip in real quick before we go to Mary, because this is a huge beef of mine too. Please don't expect us to always be apprised with your issues, because we have our issues also. I have had I have lost friends and contacts over this, and I have zero regrets about it, because the emotional burden of me having to deal with other people's issues became a thing because I wasn't speaking on my platform about their issues. Somehow I was morally suspect and not worth respect. But the thing is, I don't. If you use any kind of search engine, Google or whatnot, and you type in Philippines and you do a bit of reading, you will see that our country has been buckling under an immense amount of suffering since 2016, and even before that, if you really want to track it. So, and I don't hear any. And I'm sorry to be a snarky bitch, but I don't hear anybody going like, "Oh, but what about the Philippine drug war?" Right? So let's not play these purity politics, please. We have our own problems here, and that and honestly, that may make some of us a little tired when it comes to
Mm-hmm.
responding, when it comes to showing empathy. It's not that we don't care; it's that there are limits, and I really don't like the whole race to show that you're in the know, you're hashtag woke, you're progressive, and you care. That's not how it works. So.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
just a little hard sometimes to like also keep abreast. Like, we understand that everywhere is exploding. That's just a fact of life these days. But it's a little hard to have spoons left to care about a foreign country's issues when, how shall we say, uh there's like people outside getting killed for just because they posted something about something dissenting online. Like, it's something that really genuinely happens here. There are people who disappear just because like a dissenting post of theirs went viral, and like that's even like after probably they get trolled by the quote unquote DDSs, who are like basically, they call themselves the Duterte Death Squad, like whatever. It's ridiculous. And they're paid trolls who will go onto people's profiles to like annoy people and like tell them that they're wrong, even though their logic is ridiculous. But like, paid trolls, Facebook is rigged, whatever, right? That kind of stuff. But yeah.
Mary, you're muted, I think.
Oh, you're muted. Yeah.
Oh,
There you
well,
go. Okay.
panel things, yes. So yeah, that is like one of the problems that we do face here locally is that like even if we like have a lot of opinions about our own politics, it's like the moment that we say anything, especially in the public place, we get red tagged, and a lot of
Mhm.
people have had a lot of bad things happen to them because of that. Um,
Uh-huh.
but also circling back to like what Pam said earlier about like we're not just one community. Like even here locally, like we are multiple groups of different people who all have different opinions, thoughts about like what we have about TRPGs, what our fun is, and like like we don't want to have politics in our games and so on. Like there are just so many thoughts about that already here locally, and like what we do culturally with our TRPG games. And like if we already have that many groups here in the Philippines, we also have so many more. Like we have different like thoughts about that across RPGC as well. So like it's great that like for me when we have our own events, like it's great that we get to interact with everybody else that's in our same time zone, and it's like amazing if people from like other time zones also want to join in. But it's like, yeah, we're not just one big happy community. We're multiple communities, but we do have interactions with one another, but it's still vastly different.
And I think, if I may, I think Mary would be able to talk a whole lot if you gave her space to about D&D
Yeah.
and the Philippines, right? Like
Yeah.
another weird assumption. Okay, let's all call a spade for a spade, right? D&D is the biggest game for tabletop. When a lot of people say tabletop, they assume it's D&D, and the Philippines is no exception. It is the largest role-playing game for many different reasons. It is also it's a combination of D&D and Critical Role, because Critical Role also has a massive following here. Like, don't get me started about how huge the following is here, right? But that carries with it its own cultural burden, right? Not just about design, but also if you factor in the fact that D&D is a game written for white people by white people primarily. That is changing, but that is how it started. Now, add in the inherent tension of this white game, which has undertones of imperialism and colonial violence, being introduced to a country that with 500 plus years of transcultural exchange and colonialism. So we have a term here. Uh, it's rude slang. When we say that you are a coconut, that means that you might be brown on the outside, but you're white on the inside. That is a very real thing that happens in the Philippines, because
Mm-hmm.
the process of unpacking and decolonizing yourself is a lifelong process. Now, D&D lends itself very well to the coconuts of our community. And I think the four of us spent over 2 hours angsting about this together, and how we are all individually intersections of different things. I am a queer Filipino woman, and I'm not just any queer, I'm polyamorous and demisexual, right? And some of us are neurodivergent. So we, none of us at any point in our lives have fit in our own communities, and that also includes our own individual struggles with D&D. At one point in our lives, maybe even now, we do love the game, but I think I can say with confidence that all of us will say, I love the game, I hate the people around it. I've personally watched Mary struggle for years to figure out how to build a better community for D&D, and it only literally started getting better. Was it this year or late last year?
I think it was like late last year. We're
Late
in
last year.
like because not like for one thing, safety tools were not really normalized here. So, like when people were like, "Oh yeah, I value safety in my games." And it's like, but at the same time, like you say that, but then um you're not really like
Implementing.
implementing any of those tools. Like you don't really
Yeah.
have an X card, you don't have like a checklist or
Mm-hmm.
anything like that. But it's all like, oh, if they just talk to me, I'm going to adjust. But it's like, I have to talk to you. Like I can't just be like have it in a safer way wherein like I have to go through the emotional struggle of doing that. And like that's also one of the things here is like and like yeah, Pam is right. I can talk about like the D&D community here just in general because it's like it's basically your gateway to the RPGs. Like everybody or almost everybody starts off with D&D because it's like the most talked about, the most popularized, and yeah, we have such a huge critical role community here too that it's also what introduces people to D&D. But what a lot of people might not know is that in the Philippines, Adventurers League or the organized play for D&D is what people start with. It's not necessarily homebrew. You eventually go into homebrew after you start off with AL or Adventurers League. And
Mm-hmm.
it's like, and she's right with like the whole coconut thing is that there is an inherent whiteness about playing the game in the first place, is because like when you play the game, you don't necessarily play it like in Filipino or in our own mother tongue. We end up playing it um, in English, and everything is definitely going to be American based, even when there are events for D&D that is global and everybody can participate in. It doesn't matter what the results are here in the Philippines. What matters are the results in America because that's their main demographic. Even if people here always buy the hardcover books when it comes out, shows their support for D&D, is super active about it, writes about it, but because we're not, the center of it, our voice about it doesn't really matter that much.
Really just hammers in the whole intersectionality of how we relate to our games, to our fellow players, to a space that doesn't really cater to us or even see or listen to us. And
Mhm.
yeah, we've listed just our possible relationships with one game, with D&D. What more about how our different identities, backgrounds, and perspectives relate to the RPG making space, relate to the entire act of creation, of playing. So
Mhm.
when the myth of the one space then comes in, doesn't even look at that and then says, hey, you like say you like this product, I bet you love this white focused product as well. Never mind the fact that English may not even be your first language. Never mind the fact that maybe you don't have the same culture or touch points as they're being assumed, because me as a underrepresented and being outside that center is being conflated with this one space. Now products, ideas, solutions are being marketed and pushed to me, and if I ask questions, if I try to resist, then I will get called out for not being supportive. And that really sucks, man. That
Yeah,
incredibly sucks.
yeah. Like I'm sure three of us have already done Kickstarters, and I also know that many people uh, have offered to do Kickstarters for me. I love all of that. Thank you so much. But the fact that we have to actually have people offer Kickstarter will already show you how different my space is from yours.
Mhm.
And I've said this and I will say this until I die, because of dollar exchange rates, the commissions you give us have so much weight, right? And but that said, there is a strange burden of expectation that I've experienced as someone doing both my own work and also trying to do freelance work. The idea that we always have to be top tier. I think the analogy I used was white people get so many shots, so many opportunities.
Mhm.
You can be wildly successful or you could completely fuck it up. People who are BIMPOC and based in the United States, I think they can talk about this with much more authority than I can. They miss their shot. It's hard. What more if you're somebody like me who's not even there? If I miss that shot, will you really remember me tomorrow? Because I was very noisy for a good year or so, taken a quick break, and yet I feel like a lot of people have already forgotten me because I'm not as visible or present. I was joking around also with Momedos about this, about how are you always going to expect her to produce 1,000 million arcs at top tier quality with Kickstarters and everything for her to be remembered? That's not fair on her. Now, if she whether she does it or not is not the point. The point is she should be allowed when she wants to take a break, to also not have the game you expected or the product you expected, the writing you expected. Many people were trying as well last year to box RPGC in and insist that, oh, those guys only do story games or those guys only do OSR. And I'm like, are you fucking kidding me? Have you seen the wide range of games that are coming out? I don't know anymore who's doing what in RPGC. And that's a beautiful thing as well. And also, don't you dare tell people like, let's say, Mary and her friends that they should not be writing D&D modules. Why the hell not should they be writing D&D modules, right? What if they wanted to? What's the problem there? How come other people get to write D&D but we don't? Is it because we're colored? Is it because we have to be more hashtag woke about it, that it's a bad game, that WotC is evil and all of that? And there's another thing as well that I'd like to open up to about Luis personally, and I think Sin and I've had a lot of talks with this about this as well. We are trying to break into the freelance scene. We do not know everyone, but we know that everyone more or less knows everyone. And different times in our career, we've also been told your feeds are being watched by people who want to hire you. Please be careful, and that's fine. But also, that we have to fight this hard to get into the rooms where it happens, and that any little thing can bring us down and that it'll hurt is problematic at the core.
Mhm.
And we have at the many different points in our careers been used, or people have attempted to use us to market, to look good, to feel nice about themselves. Uh, Not forgetting the fact that we are also human. We have bills to pay. And quite frankly, some creators in TRPGs have entered because they were looking for friends, they were looking to connect. I can say, at least for myself, I walked in as a professional. I will leave as a professional. If I make friends along the way, cool. But don't expect me to do the kumbaya of playing multiple spaces and playing to their tunes rather than mine. Like, I want to be stable and I want to be heard on my own terms. And the sooner that people can recognize us for us, right? I think Mometos also said this yesterday, the human connection, right? The kindness to see the person, not the idea, would be great. I'm sure that we're shiny to you, but if you're already thinking, oh, these amazing cool Filipino designers, I totally gonna learn something, that's called cultural appropriation. Okay, if you're gonna come to this panel and to learn something, keep an open mind that we're also people. And the best way that you can help any of us is walk out of this panel and you go look at other followers, other Filipino creators, and see what they have to say. We all butt heads with each other at one point or another, and also we should be allowed to do that too.
Yeah, there's like an odd standard of like how people from the not not central spaces always have to seem, how shall we say it, incredibly morally upright and good. I don't know, like I've always gotten that impression that like it's, of course, everybody, you know, it's good to be good, right? But like the moment um the moment you have like a bad day, or the moment it seems like you're talking about, say, like a rather difficult topic, and the moment you seem to have some sort of like dissenting opinion on anything, um you're labeled as one of the many other labels that exist around, you know, these spaces. And you're now dirty, is what it is. You become dangerous, or you become that messy POC or something like that, which is like, I super don't appreciate that, because for one, everybody should be allowed to like mess up on occasion. Like everybody should be allowed to like mess up and learn on occasion. Like you don't have to be like squeaky clean every time, I think, because um you know, if you are a decent human being, if you have made a mistake, you should be able to take accountability for it, apologize properly, right? And like that's how it should be, right? So I don't understand sometimes how once you make like the tiniest mistake, if you're not from the center, you're immediately like shunned out even farther than than how you already are. And you're left kind of like scrambling and picking up whatever pieces of what you can, I suppose. Of course, I don't have like a concrete example at the moment, because a lot has happened over the past 2 years. But like, you know.
Also, we've been kind of lucky, right, that that hasn't actually happened to us, but we've seen it happen to other people,
Yeah, yeah,
right?
yeah, yeah.
And
And
the
I don't
other
know, it's just that you seem to have to be so yeah, the whole thing about like your feeds getting watched, that you have to attune to being what the centers deem as like hireable or trustworthy or whatever other else good qualities that they think you should have, is something that I think is like quite difficult to overcome when some whiter folks, I don't know how you would, how what the right term would be, but like some people who are in the center would just submit maybe a portfolio that's like half done and they get the job. Like
Yeah, I'm sorry, not sorry, but I'm gonna cut in again, and I have to say, when I was judging for IGDN's Groundbreakers, it was telling to me that 99% of the products from people of color, whether they were in or out of the center, all of their submissions were 100 to 250% polished. Layout, illustration, full editing, full game, everything was polished. 80% of the white submissions, Word document, barely finished layout, half a game. This dramatic pause is not lag, that's on purpose. Let that sink in. Holy shit, right? And my document was full of, why is this here? Like, I'm gonna come out and say that when I was writing the document, I was like, why is this game here? When I have a 500, let's say a 500-page compilation from Italy of all of their LARPs, right? The Jewish compilation of their entire anthology and culture. My own partner's game where I saw them struggle with aesthetics, right? It blows the mind how much effort anybody who's marginalized has to put in. Oh, I see a question. Do you feel like you were constrained in your games that were having to be marketed in the US versus making a great game for your local community? Whoa, that's a difficult one. For
Yeah.
me, yes. Uh, there's the myth again also of universality when it comes to audience, right? The first thing I learned as a lit professor and also as a writer is that naturally you can never speak for the entire audience. You should suss out anybody who says that they do. When you make something, sometimes the act of finding your audience is an exercise. You don't actually know. You make it and then you're like, right, it's speaking to that group. Okay, cool. Or right, maybe I'm speaking to this group. Oh shit, apparently I'm not. Right. There is a difference when I am making a game that I know a lot of local folks can relate to versus a game that more a wider international audience could. I got some kind feedback about one of my Powered by the Apocalypse games, Sundo. Somebody told me that I should actually make a more white name so that it becomes successful. And I'm like, really? A more white name? Should I put in the pronunciation of Sundo rather than Sundo? Like, what do you want here? Right. But I kindly made the middle ground of Sundo, fancy colon, we once mortal, right? So now it makes a little bit more sense, right? But the fact that somebody actually came to you that feedback is ridiculous. So, and the reality also is that, yes, we do have to market to you if we want to be visible. Because if we don't market to you, frankly speaking, we are economically hobbling ourselves because it is your market that has the bigger bucks versus ours. The other market I could think of that could pay for our products would be, let's say, the British Isles. That's maybe some parts of Europe. That's it. But selling to other Southeast Asian creators with our shitty exchange rates and everything, and our coup d'etats left and right and extrajudicial killings, I'm not so sure about that. Right. So that's me anyway. I think Sin and Domingos might have more to say there.
Yeah, I will maybe mention a more specific instance, right? And I think the questions was, what did you have to leave out? And I think Pam mentioned the other flip side of that, what were we pressured to put in? So when I was doing the ARC Kickstarter, I got some marketing advice that, hey, maybe your copy should be more like D&D, so it sells more. And I'm like, I know from one level that that will mean reaching a big audience, and that would be nice, cash money, so good. But it also felt like a compromise of my own artistic values and my own personal values as well. So it's kind of a weird tightrope. Like, having to play by these invisible rules that nobody told you about, that nobody's willing to explain because they think it's just so completely natural and you should absolutely know how to play this one space rules. And one other thing that we had talked about previously before is on the other complete side of the coin. If we worry sometimes about needing to cater to white audience default preferences, sometimes we also have to worry about catering to their narrative about us. And I do also have to need to go to an aside, right? Because we do say white people, but when we do say that, it's not about skin color, it's about the whole colonizer mentality. It's about being privy to privileges that you assume are natural and you judge others for not having access to that. But anyway, going back to the story of having to fit into their narratives and not just marketing preferences, I think some people, a lot, white people, tend to ask, hey, it's a Filipino RPG. Is there going to be a tikbalang there? I bet it's going to be about post colonial history as well, right? That's cool. I've always wanted to try authentic Filipino native indigenous game. And I'm like, please, no, I just
Authentic.
want, I want to be a
I'm going to
creator.
sink into my
Yeah.
screen. God. Like, I mean, not to say that like narratives about pre-colonial, post-colonial, whatever parts of the Philippines are bad, right? Like I've written a few myself, but it's just to always expect that people from the Philippines have to write about pre or post-colonial narratives is such a racist thing to say. like, I mean, what else is it, right? Are you expecting people from say, I don't know, Indonesia to always write about Indonesia? Um um are you expecting people from any other part of the planet to always just be writing about that? Like, what about you, Americans? You're putting burgers in every single game that you make. Where's your fries? I don't know. Where's your subs? I don't know. Like, it's just ridiculous for me.
To be
Why do we
fair, they
have
do
to be
put guns in everything.
Oh, see, yeah.
And
Tomatoes mentioned
capitalism.
that last time. Guns. Where are the guns?
Um, I mean, I'm a Canadian who did a lumberjack game, so I can't talk.
freedom?
Oh, but
And the
Texas love
Eagles, where are
letters.
the
But like
Eagles, you
anyway,
know?
where are the
no, there's
eagles?
nothing. Yeah, there's nothing bad about it, right? But like expecting us to always write about that thing is just, I don't know.
Yeah.
It's just not great. And like to also give another example, like Lutong Ban was originally written in my mother tongue, which is Hiligaynon. And it is actually the first game and currently only game to be written in that language. I uh I intended it to be so, but a deep dark part of me knew that I had to translate it to English because nobody's gonna understand, or like at least I had the great feeling that like it would not be appreciated for the way that it should be, simply because people don't understand what I'm saying because it's not English, right? And like that itself is us having to cater, right? I have a few more ideas, a few more games that I want to also write in Hiligaynon, but like, having to write your game twice and in another language is kind of it's kind of tiring. Like I remember having to like really kind of like rush that game because I wanted to have it out for session 0. So I had to write it within a certain span of time because session 0 only accepts games written the year before. So like the year before its actual like event. So I had to write it within like a few months before like I would release it in session 0, right? So I knew that I had to write first the game in Hiligaynon and then eventually translate it in English. And like, why can't I just write it in Hiligaynon and then y'all figure out the translation? I wish I could do that. But I'm pretty sure that it would not be as appreciated if I had not translated it. That's the whole, I guess,
Yeah.
point about it, you know?
Oh, I also wanted to add as well that like, okay, all of us are sound angry because we are angry or we're tired. But at the end of the day, some at least I am grateful that people continue to look at me as somebody who is a viable hire, because honestly, keeping the lights on is the most important thing for me right now. Uh, what I rail against are people who will hire me for their diversity checklist. If you're hiring me because you want to help, cool. If you're hiring me because you feel like you want to you want to hear my voice, great. But if you're hiring me because you want to help a little brown girl in the Philippines, that need I remind you that I'm 36. I have not been little since I was 10. I can take care of myself. Thank you very much. Right. So hire all of us and take all of us and all of our perspectives for what they are. And it is also perfectly okay for you to not like me and want to hire somebody else too. There is a wide amount of talent in the Philippines. I sound like a tourist advertisement, but it's true. We really do have a lot to offer. And honestly, another big thing here is even the idea of a singular Filipino is a problem. And I'm sure that if any of you took a moment to think about your own areas and your own contexts and find the different demographics of people in in your space, you will come up with a lot, right? Because in the Philippines alone, in this chat alone, all of us come from a different province, if I remember correctly. Or we have roots elsewhere beyond Manila, right? And there are different ethnic groups, and Sin already mentioned Hiligaynon, their language. I primarily speak Tagalog, and that comes from one island only. And we just have so many different things happening here, and all of those different things could go into different games if you'd let us, rather than insist that we must talk about the aswang or the mango or the tikbalang or the balete tree or our food. Like I always get people asking me about food, and I'm like, unless I start the food conversation, I don't want you to ask me about my food. This face is not a mango, okay? So there's just we don't have a lot of time left, but I think we've only just started scratching the surface here. Personally, if you gave us like 3 4 hours, we could talk your ears off about a bunch of shit. Uh, but my most important thing before I leave the floor to the rest for any closing statements, wrap ups, whatever, is follow all of us on Twitter, especially follow across RPGC. Momato's project is amazing. The hashtag RPGC is also great. I like pushing the hashtag because I was nominally in the room where it happened. Misachi Momato's loving partner that started it with a bunch of friends, and they were like, "Hey Pam, can you help?" And I'm like, "Sure, let's go." But I wasn't actually the one who really put the hashtag out there, right? And if you're about to think about, oh shit, that's so much work, then let me remind you that it's so much work for me to cater to you. So that's it for me anyway.
So following up on what you've asked, for all of the clueless white rich publishers, what's the best way for people in my demographic to be hunting down and looking for some of this amazing talent to give far too much money to? Because there's a lot of brilliant people, and I guarantee that most of the white publishers know 5 people and are just going to these 5 people because they're the only ones they know, and they don't know where to do their research. So where should people like me be looking for some of the amazing talent that is currently not getting the contracts they deserve?
So,
Well, if I could start, sorry. I
oh,
just like to say that we can add you to the Session Zero Discord if you'd like. The Session Zero Discord hosts the this like fortnightly thing where they talk and like they gather and they talk about whatever games that they want to test and play test. Uh, I had no hand in this. This was Aaron Lim and Shy by Post and other people who are really reliable regulars that come around, and it's great what they've done. But it's really a lot of people from like RPGC coming together. So if you wanna come around and sit around and like listen and test your own stuff, also it would be like a good place to come around. Just I guess look for me on Twitter and then ask for the Discord link. I'll ask the rest of the mods if we're good with it. I can bring you in. What else? Also, hashtag RPGC is always like good for it. Honestly. Do you guys have other like recommendations? Too? I'm looking for a
Send me those.
publisher for
Yeah.
GovFM's end.
Hire me, please, please. I need
Yeah,
to
but
feed my cat.
if you are
Um,
looking for to reach out, particularly RPGC creators, the project that I maintain across RPGC has a Twitter account which is primarily focused on retweeting and resharing when games are being made, when events and milestones happens with Southeast Asian creators. That Twitter account also maintains a list of RPGC creators, so you can follow the Twitter, see accounts of people who I know and are Southeast Asian creators making RPGC and be able to contact them easily. You can also go to across-rpgc.com. That is a really nifty website, so you can load up games by Southeast Asian creators if you know stumble upon it. If you are a millennial, it's kind of like that. But across-rpgc.com also has a really well organized search and filter and list of creators who are in the database, and clicking any of those will go directly to their page.
All right, so let's wrap this up. So, who are you? Where can they find you? And more importantly, where can they give you money? Let's start with Mari.
Well, I'm not a writer, but I just want to say, please, please hire all of these wonderful people. Hire everybody that's like, from RPGC. Like the exchange rate, like $1 for you can buy an entire meal for like the lunch here in the Philippines. Like that is how the difference is. So it is great if you could just hire people from here. They work amazing. I'm Mary. You can follow me at Bloody Mary. That's with 3 eyes on Twitter. I mostly just retweet random stuff and also talk about our own events that we do locally. I have an event coming up in December, which is going to be Dungeons and Dragons related because it's a thing that people attend here in the Philippines. And it is the gateway drug, I guess, to more TRPGs. Like we just try to promote as much as we can. So yes, please follow these wonderful people. They are amazing writers, editors, and everything about that. So yes, that's just me.
Sin.
If you would like to follow me, I am on Twitter at Diwata Manila. That's DIWATA Manila. I have a card so that you can view all of my services available. I do illustrations, layout. I do your cards on itch.io, your covers, your banners, everything, anything that you can think of. I accept work all year round, 24/7. It is my card is DIWATAMNL diwatamnl.card.co. I have an itch that is still diwatamnl.itch.io. I have a Patreon. I have a Redbubble, all the same diwatamnl dot redbubble.com and patreon.com/diwatamnl. I have a Kofi, and you can, if you have any professional inquiries, you can contact me through email at diwatanangmanila@gmail.com. I linked a all of my socials in one like pinned post. Go right ahead. It's all
Momentos.
there.
Yeah. So to reach me, it's just Momotos everywhere on Twitter.com, even Patreon, PayPal. I think I had a coffee at one point. So it's just Momeros. But before I do have to squeeze in, I'm so sorry. I know we're running quite tight on time, but we have been talking about Philippine spaces. We have been talking about our perspectives. But something I also want to push back to the audience is to interrogate and investigate how they themselves have their own valid need for their own spaces that will understand them and that will see them, and that they also have that power to create those spaces themselves. And I'm just gonna mention this briefly because I've been seeing a lot of even despair over people with like mixed heritage, people who are neurodiverse, people who don't have the same gender identity or have different identities that are not the center, and then feeling like an outsider. So we're talking about Philippines, but you yourself will have your own space, and you can make that own space and connect with people who will actually see you. So yeah, go to twitter.com/tomatoes for more cool takes like these.
And head over to the Discord to talk a little bit more, since we're going to be cut off in a second.